Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. James's attention was drawn to a small blister pack resting on the bathroom counter, its silvery foil catching the light. He picked it up, turning it over in his hands. The unfamiliar packaging piqued his curiosity. It was out of place among their usual household items. With a furrowed brow, he set it back down and began rifling through the nearby cabinet and Rebecca's makeup drawer, searching for answers. Tucked away behind a clutter of old perfume bottles, he unearthed something that sent a jolt through him, a small cardboard box. His pulse quickened as he read the label, birth control pills. James froze, the realization crashing over him. After their son Sam was born, James had undergone a vasectomy, rendering contraceptives unnecessary, or so he'd thought. His gaze shifted toward the hallway. The faint sound of laughter drifted in from the living room where Emily, 6, and Sam, 4, were playing. A knot of unease tightened in his chest. He couldn't let them sense anything was wrong, but his mind churned with questions. There seemed to be only one reason for Rebecca to have birth control pills, and it didn't involve him. He carefully returned the box to its hiding spot, closed the drawer, and stepped back, his thoughts racing. Confronting Rebecca now felt premature. He needed to gather more information. If she was hiding something, he had to approach this delicately. With a mix of resolve and apprehension, James left the bathroom, the unsettling discovery clinging to him like a shadow. At 37, James prided himself on his sharp instincts, qualities that had propelled his success as a marketing specialist. His job often took him on the road, filled with client meetings, long flights, and nights spent working in sterile hotel rooms. But the company's recent shift to hybrid workdays had granted him more time at home with Rebecca and their kids. He'd cherished the newfound closeness, until this morning's revelation threatened to unravel it all. By the time James fully processed what he'd found, Rebecca had already left for work, leaving him to handle the kids' morning routine alone. Emily and Sam chattered happily in the back seat as he drove them to school and daycare, blissfully unaware of his inner turmoil. An idea began to take root in James's mind. If he wanted answers, he needed concrete evidence. A DNA test to confirm if Emily and Sam were truly his started to seem like the only way to get clarity. The more he dwelled on it, the more determined he became. Alongside the DNA test, another idea emerged, discreetly installing surveillance cameras around the house. It was a drastic step, but James felt it was necessary. He needed to know what happened when he wasn't home. How did Rebecca spend her time during his late-night work calls or client meetings? After dropping off the kids, James refined his plan. He would gather DNA samples from Emily and Sam, perhaps strands of hair from their brushes or saliva from their toothbrushes, and send them to a reputable lab under a fake name. As for the cameras, he would place them in key areas where Rebecca was likely to spend time, making sure they blended seamlessly into the surroundings. A chance to act came quickly. When Rebecca mentioned plans for a night out with friends, James saw an opening. That evening, while she was away, he carefully installed 3 small cameras, one in the living room, another in the kitchen, and a third in their bedroom. Each one was hidden with meticulous precision, giving him a measure of control over an otherwise chaotic situation. To maintain the illusion of normalcy, James mentioned over dinner that he'd be busy with a new project at work. "Looks like I'll be staying late at the office for the next week," he said, feigning frustration. Rebecca responded casually. "That's fine," she said with a shrug. "Work's slow for me right now, so I can handle things with the kids." She smiled at him, warm, reassuring, and unremarkable. James forced a smile in return, masking the storm of thoughts swirling in his mind. Over the following week, James executed his plan. Each morning, he left for the office, pausing in his car to prepare himself for whatever the cameras might reveal. He piled on extra work to validate his long hours, often staying until the building was nearly deserted. Then, at night, he would review the footage, his laptop glowing faintly in the darkness. The waiting gnawed at him, a mixture of dread and determination propelling him forward. James knew that what he uncovered could upend his entire world, but he was ready. Whatever the truth turned out to be, he was resolved to face it head on. At first, life seemed to follow its usual pattern, predictable and comforting in its familiarity. Rebecca had taken some time off work to be with the kids and handle various household chores. James watched her as she prepared meals, drove the children to school, and folded laundry. These were everyday actions, reassuring in their ordinariness. But as Thursday approached, a strange undercurrent began to disrupt this routine. While reviewing security footage that evening, James caught sight of Rebecca sitting in the living room, her phone pressed to her ear. Her voice was low, her tone urgent, as though she didn't want to be overheard. Despite the poor audio quality, James strained to catch her words. Disjointed phrases surfaced, and then a name. Robert Collins, her boss. The familiarity in her tone set off alarm bells. It was far from professional. Most of the conversation was garbled, but certain phrases managed to break through the static. Meeting, don't worry, we'll figure it out. James's jaw tightened as he watched her recline on the couch, laughing softly and absently twisting a strand of hair between her fingers. By the time he closed the laptop that night, an inescapable unease had taken hold. The woman he thought he knew so well now seemed like a stranger, her actions carving away at the trust he had always taken for granted. Then Friday came, bringing with it a discovery that shattered his tenuous sense of calm. The day's footage began innocuously. Rebecca was in the kitchen, packing lunches and helping the kids get ready for school. Little Sam, with his oversized backpack nearly swallowing him whole, giggled as Rebecca crouched down to fix it. Turning up the volume, James caught her voice, bright and cheerful, yet holding a statement that stopped him cold. After school today, we're going to visit Robert for a few hours. James froze. Why would Rebecca take their children to see her boss? His confusion spiraled into dread as she added, "This is our little secret, okay? Daddy can't know about this trip. If he does, the evil fairy will come and take him away forever, and he'll be so sad." The children exchanged solemn looks, their young faces marked by an unnatural seriousness. "We won't tell, Mommy," Sam whispered, his voice filled with earnestness. Emily nodded in agreement, clapping her small hands as if they had just been entrusted with an important mission. James's heart twisted painfully. Their innocence was being used to conceal something dark, something he wasn't ready to confront. His mind raced, his thoughts crashing into each other as he replayed the scene. Rebecca wasn't just hiding something, she was involving their children in the deception. Anger surged through him, hot and uncontrollable. For a fleeting moment, he wanted to hurl the laptop across the room. Instead, he clenched the edge of the desk, his knuckles turning white as he fought to keep his composure. Losing control wouldn't help him get to the truth. With the laptop shut, a heavy weight settled over him. The DNA test results he'd ordered would soon arrive, offering the answers he dreaded. Until then, he could do nothing but wait, his frustrations simmering beneath the surface. Questions swirled relentlessly in his mind, each one sharper than the last. The Rebecca he thought he knew was slipping away, and with her, the life they had built together. That evening, James came home later than usual. The children were already tucked into bed, and Rebecca lay sprawled on the couch, scrolling through her phone. She glanced up as he walked in, her face lighting up with a tired but warm smile. "Tough day?" she asked casually. "Yeah, pretty long," he replied, forcing a smile as he leaned down to kiss her cheek. The gesture felt hollow, an act he had to perform. Suppressing the urge to pull away, he engaged in light conversation, asking about her day while masking the storm brewing inside him. Rebecca seemed oblivious, laughing at his jokes and brushing his arm playfully, her affection a cruel contrast to the doubts gnawing at him. When the house finally fell silent and everyone else was asleep, James lay awake in the darkness. His thoughts refused to quiet, circling endlessly. Rebecca's secrecy, the trip to see Robert, her cryptic conversations. Each memory tightened the noose around his mind, leaving him gasping for clarity. By the early hours of the morning, He could no longer bear the suffocating weight of his suspicions. Slipping quietly out of bed, he moved toward Rebecca's nightstand, where her phone rested. His hands trembled as he picked it up, his breathing shallow and quick. Closing the bedroom door softly behind him, he locked himself in the bathroom. For a moment, he simply stared at the device, the dark screen reflecting his anguished face. The sound of his heartbeat roared in his ears as he steeled himself, knowing he was crossing a line he could never uncross. He had never crossed her boundaries like this before. Their unspoken agreement to honor each other's privacy had been inviolable until now. But that trust had evaporated, dissolved by a growing sense of doubt. Steeling himself, he began tapping the screen, inputting passwords, each failed attempt making the knot in his stomach tighten. After a series of futile guesses, he entered Emily's birth date. The screen unlocked. The light from the phone pierced the shadowy bathroom, highlighting the tremor in his hands as he opened her messages. At first, the conversations seemed harmless, ordinary exchanges with her mother, casual banter with colleagues. Then he saw Robert's name. His chest tightened as he opened the thread, apprehension building with every word. Most messages seemed innocent enough, discussions about work, scheduling, lighthearted jokes, but sprinkled among them, like drops of venom, were phrases that made his blood run cold. Can't wait to see you. Tomorrow? Same spot? Miss you. James felt as though the air had been sucked from the room. The walls seemed to press closer with each passing second as he scrolled further, his hands shaking. Then he saw it, the message that tore his world apart. I can't leave my husband yet. This has to be done carefully. The floor seemed to tilt beneath him. This wasn't a fleeting mistake. It was deliberate, premeditated. She wasn't merely unfaithful. She was planning to abandon him completely. And worse, the fragmented nature of the thread suggested messages had been deleted. But the damning ones were still there, leaving no doubt. James steadied his quaking hands and pulled out his own phone. Methodically, he took photos of the screen, preserving every incriminating line. His mind was a whirlwind of devastation and fury. When he finished, he quietly placed her phone back on the nightstand, ensuring everything appeared untouched. Crawling back into bed, he lay frozen beside her, staring into the darkness as Rebecca slept peacefully, unaware of the storm raging inches away. The hours dragged on, his thoughts spiraling into despair. When dawn finally arrived, James barely recognized himself in the mirror. The face staring back was gaunt, his eyes hollow, his features etched with exhaustion. At breakfast, Rebecca noticed his transformation. You don't look well, she remarked softly, her fingers brushing his arm with concern. Are you okay? He forced a faint smile, dismissing her worry with a hollow excuse. Just been having trouble sleeping, he mumbled. Rebecca seemed unconvinced, but she let it go. Still, throughout the weekend, he felt her eyes lingering on him, sensing the unspoken tension. Every fleeting glance threatened to unravel him, but he maintained a facade of indifference, burying his turmoil under a brittle exterior. By Sunday night, he was counting the hours until work would provide a welcome escape. On Monday, just before lunch, his phone vibrated. His chest tightened as he opened the email. The DNA test results had arrived. He read the words over and over as if repetition could somehow alter their meaning. Probability of paternity, 0%. Time froze. Emily and Sam, his children, the ones he had loved and nurtured as his own, were not his. The revelation hit like a physical blow, scorching away the foundation of his life. He sat in stunned silence as a horrifying realization dawned. Rebecca's affair with Robert wasn't just a betrayal. Robert wasn't just her boss. He was almost certainly the father of the children James had devoted his life to raising. Anger surged, overpowering his despair. This wasn't a wound that could heal, nor a betrayal he could forgive. Rebecca's intricate web of deceit had finally unraveled, and James was done being ensnared. Resolute, he called his boss and cited a personal emergency, then left work immediately. His next call was to Angela Miller, an attorney whose marketing he had supported years ago. Now, he needed her legal expertise for something far more personal. When he arrived at Angela's sleek, modern office, the walls adorned with degrees and awards, she greeted him warmly, her sharp eyes scanning him with curiosity. "James," she said, gesturing for him to sit. "It's been a while. What brings you here?" The tension in James's voice was undeniable as he collapsed into the chair, every muscle in his body wound tight. At first he struggled to find the words, his emotions choking him, but soon the dam burst. He confessed it all: the pills he discovered, the hidden cameras he stumbled upon, the secretive meetings, and the devastating DNA test results that shattered his reality. Angela sat silently, her eyes unwavering and her hands clasped as she absorbed every shocking detail he shared. When James finally finished, Angela leaned back in her chair, releasing a deliberate, steadying breath. "James," she said gently, her voice tinged with compassion, "what you've been through is a profound betrayal. I'm so sorry, but you need to be careful. Don't let your emotions drive your next moves. This situation requires strategy." Though James nodded, his anger simmered just beneath the surface. "I can't keep living like this, Angela," he admitted, his voice cracking under the weight of his anguish. "She's been lying to me for years. I've been raising children that aren't even mine. And God knows how many times they've been sneaking off to Robert's house without me having a clue." His hands clenched into fists, his frustration boiling over. Angela leaned forward, her tone deliberate. "I get it, James. And I know you're desperate for resolution, but acting impulsively could make things worse. Divorce is messy, especially when infidelity and children are part of the equation." Her voice grew firmer as she continued, shifting to a pragmatic approach. "Here's where you need to start. Secure your assets. Collect every financial record you have: bank statements, pay stubs, receipts, anything that shows your earnings, savings, or investments. Organization will be your greatest strength." James's jaw tightened as he met her gaze. "She's not getting a penny more than what's fair," he declared with a steely edge to his voice. Angela nodded firmly. "We'll make sure of that. But remember, the court's primary concern will be the children, regardless of their biological connection to you. That's a reality you have to be prepared for. Depending on how this unfolds, we may even need to bring Robert into the legal process." "Good," James said bitterly, his voice dripping with resentment. "I want him involved. Both of them deserve to face the consequences." Angela's expression remained calm, her gaze steady. "And they will. But we need to approach this intelligently. Don't confront Rebecca yet. Let her think everything is normal. While she's in the dark, I'll begin filing the necessary paperwork, and we'll devise the best course of action to ensure you come out ahead." James took a deep breath, letting Angela's words sink in. For the first time amidst the chaos, he felt a flicker of clarity. "You're right," he said softly. "I'll do whatever it takes." Angela's lips curved into a small, determined smile. "You're not alone in this, James. We'll make sure justice is served." In the weeks that followed, the two worked tirelessly to construct an unassailable case. Angela guided James step by step, helping him secure his assets and lock down his finances. They meticulously documented Rebecca's actions, gathering every piece of evidence they could find. Angela also established a trust to protect James's property and savings from the divorce proceedings, ensuring his future was safeguarded. Her methodical approach left no detail overlooked, positioning James with every possible advantage. Each passing day strengthened James's resolve. The foundation had been laid, the strategy airtight. He felt ready to face the inevitable confrontation. One evening, as Rebecca lounged on the couch, scrolling casually through her phone, James stood in the doorway, the divorce papers clutched tightly in his hand. The sight of her so at ease made his chest constrict, but he steadied himself. Summoning every ounce of composure, he stepped into the room and met her gaze. "Rebecca," he said, his voice calm, though his pulse thundered in his ears. Extending the documents toward her, he added, "We need to talk." Rebecca's demeanor shifted dramatically the moment her eyes fell on the documents. What started as mild confusion quickly escalated into shock, followed by a slow-burning fury. In a swift motion, she grabbed the papers from James's hands, her face flushing as she scanned the text. "What is this supposed to be?" she demanded, her voice quivering with restrained anger. "Are you seriously doing this?" James remained unmoved, arms folded across his chest, his tone calm but firm. "It's exactly what it looks like, Rebecca. I've uncovered everything." Her eyes widened briefly, a flicker of disbelief crossing her face before hardening into a glare. "This is absurd, James," she retorted sharply. "You're making something out of nothing. This is pure paranoia." James shook his head with quiet determination. "No, Rebecca. This is the truth." Her fury boiled over, her voice lowering to a venomous whisper. "You've lost your grip on reality, James. Think about the kids. You're going to destroy their lives with this madness." But James held his ground. His voice stayed steady, unwavering. "No, Rebecca. You destroyed it all. You've been deceiving me for years, and now you're trying to use the kids against me? I won't let you manipulate me any longer." Rebecca's anger shifted to desperation. Her voice softened, almost pleading. "James, they're your children. You've been their father, their protector. How could you even think of abandoning them like this?" James looked at her with unflinching resolve. Without a word, he turned and walked away, leaving the house. As he drove off, his heart raced with the weight of betrayal pressing heavily on his chest. He found himself parked at a remote overlook, seeking refuge in the solitude. Sitting in his car, James opened his laptop and accessed the live feed from the cameras he had secretly installed weeks earlier. The screen came to life, showing Rebecca pacing anxiously in the kitchen. Her movements were frantic, her face pale with tension. She grabbed her phone and dialed, her voice trembling as she spoke. "Robert," she began, her tone a volatile mix of anger and panic. "He served me the divorce papers. He knows, Robert, he knows everything." James's pulse raced as he turned up the volume, straining to catch every word. "This is too soon," Rebecca hissed. "He wasn't supposed to find out yet. I should have filed first like we planned. If I had, I could have secured everything before he caught on. But your divorce took too long, because of your ex and her fertility mess." She exhaled sharply, running a hand through her hair. "I told you this would happen if we waited." The truth hit James like a freight train. Her lies, her reassurances, her carefully orchestrated steps. It had all been part of a calculated plan. Rebecca's betrayal wasn't a moment of weakness. It was a deliberate scheme. A quiet, fervent thank you escaped James's lips as he realized just how close he had come to losing everything. For the first time in weeks, he felt a glimmer of hope. Now, he had a chance to reclaim his life. Determined, James committed himself to seeing this through. He wasn't alone in the fight. With Angela's guidance, he began preparing for the legal battle ahead. It would be more than just the end of his marriage. It would be the unveiling of Rebecca's duplicity. The first step was making the truth impossible to deny. Methodically, James compiled and distributed the damning evidence. Text messages between Rebecca and Robert, DNA results confirming the children weren't biologically his, and other incriminating details. He shared it with her closest confidants, friends, family, and acquaintances. The fallout was immediate and brutal. Shock and disgust rippled through her social circles, leaving Rebecca isolated and scrambling to defend herself against the avalanche of judgment. In court, James stood tall, Angela by his side. Armed with indisputable evidence, he presented his case with precision and clarity, dismantling Rebecca's defenses at every turn. Her attempts to justify her actions crumbled under the weight of the truth. Each revelation brought James closer to reclaiming his dignity and ensuring justice. What began as a devastating betrayal transformed into a story of resilience. Confronting the painful truth head-on, James refused to let Rebecca's manipulation dictate his future. In the end, he emerged stronger, with his integrity intact and a renewed sense of purpose. The evidence painted an undeniable picture. Messages, surveillance footage, and definitive DNA tests collectively exposed the harsh truth. Standing in court, James recounted the years he had devoted to a marriage that, unbeknownst to him, was riddled with deceit. He detailed the emotional scars left by the betrayal, wounds that ran deeper than he could have imagined. As James shared his story, the judge carefully examined the case files and ordered another round of DNA testing to confirm the paternity of Emily and Sam. As the proceedings unfolded, attention turned toward Robert Collins, a reluctant witness who had been compelled to take the stand. Robert entered the courtroom with visible tension, his unease apparent in every strained movement. It was revealed that he had endured a tumultuous marriage marked by his and his wife's inability to have children. Their struggle with infertility had driven a deep wedge between them, leading to a bitter divorce over the past year. Their separation, fraught with disputes over property and finances, had left Robert emotionally shattered and financially strapped. Despite these challenges, the court unearthed the truth about his secret affair with Rebecca, a relationship he had hidden while outwardly pretending to mend his marriage. Rebecca claimed ignorance regarding the true paternity of the children, asserting she could not have been certain that Robert was their biological father. She painted herself as an unwitting victim, accusing James of letting his anger distort his perspective. Yet the mountain of evidence told a different tale. The court reviewed a trove of messages, intimate communications, and finally, the conclusive DNA results that established Robert as the father of Emily and Sam. Rebecca's denials began to falter under the crushing weight of proof, and her pretense collapsed in the face of the judge's relentless scrutiny. At the conclusion of the trial, the judge delivered a decisive verdict in James's favor. His marriage to Rebecca was annulled, and he was freed from any future financial responsibilities toward her or her children. Additionally, his assets were protected, ensuring Rebecca could not claim the division of wealth she had once sought. Acknowledging the profound betrayal James had endured, the court awarded him substantial compensation for the years he had unknowingly provided for children who were not his. As the judge's gavel signaled the trial's end, James felt a profound sense of release. The trial's conclusion brought closure to a harrowing chapter in James's life. The pain and betrayal that had defined his recent years were now behind him. As he left the courthouse with his head held high, James felt a renewed sense of dignity and purpose. Angela, his steadfast ally throughout the ordeal, walked beside him, ready to help him face the next phase of his life. The weeks that followed were marked by quiet victories. James settled into a new home, approached his work with fresh determination, and began rediscovering the inner peace that had long eluded him. Bit by bit, he pieced his life back together. For the first time in years, James felt whole. The shadow of lies had lifted, leaving him stronger and clearer than ever. With the worst behind him, he looked toward the future with optimism, ready to embrace the brighter days that lay ahead. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel.